This week's parsha is Parshat Vaera. This is based on Rav Bernstein's Dvar Torah. I think I actually heard this from him 2 years ago at Machon Yaakov, but I also just heard it online and thought it was wonderful. So let's go through it. So we're actually going to start with the makkahs, right? The first makkah of blood, right? Dam. So here we are. Chapter 7, verse 19. So Hashem said to Moses, say to Aaron, take your staff and stretch out your hand over the waters of Egypt, over the rivers, canals, etc., and they shall become blood. That's what the pasuk says. Now Rashi here is commenting on why is Hashem telling Moses to tell Aaron to do this? Why does Aaron have to do it? So it says Rashi, right? Since the Nile protected Moshe when he was put into it, and the Nile saved Moshe, as such Moshe can't strike the river. So here we're talking about midot, right? Of good character traits, good values that we need to show gratitude. Moshe needs to show gratitude to the river, and therefore he can't strike it. Not for dam and not for tzvardea, not for blood or for frogs, not the next two makkahs. Now this is a little bit strange because on the one hand, children can understand this. It's important to show gratitude even to a river. So wow, that's a great lesson. The problem is, adults have a bit of a hard time understanding this. So while it's certainly good that children understand it, we have trouble if adults do not. And the Mefarshim actually ask questions on this. Because what does that mean that Moshe owes a debt of gratitude to the Nile? On the one hand, will the Nile appreciate Moshe's gratitude? Not so sure. Does it even deserve Moshe's gratitude? Because at the end of the day, what the Nile did was the Nile flowed. The Nile is a river, rivers flow, and it just carried Moshe along. So why is it deserving of gratitude? That doesn't seem to make a lot of sense. And moreover, Rav Bernstein says, let's say that Moshe actually does owe a debt of gratitude to the river. So is there something that Moshe could do to show his appreciation to the river? Is there something that would really be good for the river? Now, amazingly, I believe say the Mefarshim, yes, Moshe can hit the river. Why is it good for the river? Because if Moshe hits the Nile will return to blood. If the Nile turns to blood, then the Nile will stop being used in the way it's normally used throughout the rest of the year, which is as an object of avodah zarah for the Egyptians. That is to say, the Egyptians worship the Nile, and now if Moshe strikes it, it'll turn to blood. The Egyptians will stop worshiping it at least for a week, and now it's an object of Kiddush Hashem. It's revealing God's glory in the world. What higher purpose could it want? That's the best way to go about it. So why shouldn't Moshe strike the river? That's the best way to go. Moreover, even by the makkah of kinim, of lice, again, we see the same concept. Chapter 8, verse 12, Hashem said to Moses, say to Aaron, stretch out your staff and strike the dust of the land, and it shall become lice throughout the land of Egypt. Says Rashi, Emor al Aaron, lo haya ha'afar kedai lelakot al yidei Moshe, lefi shehegan alav, ksheharagan ha'mitzri v'yitmenu b'cho. Just like we said last week, when Moshe struck the Egyptian and killed, again, we gave I guess a more abstract idea of it, but literally speaking, it means that Moshe struck the Egyptian and buried him in the sand. So because the sand buried the Egyptian, Moshe needs to show appreciation or gratitude towards the sand, and therefore he can't strike it. But again, this doesn't, at least with the Nile actually did save Moshe, right? Because it allowed him to float along. And then Batya, Paro's daughter, found him and saved him. With the sand, Moshe had to run away 24 hours later, so the sand didn't really help him. And even so, he needs to show gratitude. So what's going on? So these two Rashis, which are actually based on Chazals, so they're at least 500,000 years older, needs some explanation, and Rav Dessler steps up to the task. Rav Bernstein brings this, and he says, Rav Dessler explains these two Rashis as follows, that there are two types of truth. There's intellectual truth, and there's emotional truth. Now, intellectual truth is the kind of truth that we recognize. It's something that's demonstrably correct, that's demonstrably right. It's provable, and this is the truth. Emotional truth is something that doesn't fly well with us, that something feels wrong. So even though, intellectually speaking, it's not wrong, it feels wrong. And that's what's going on in these two Rashis. That even though it's true, intellectually speaking, Moshe does not need to show gratitude or hakarat tov to the Nile. He doesn't need to show it to the sand or the dust. But even so, because it feels wrong, Moshe wants to take a step back and not do it because it just feels wrong, even if it's intellectually not wrong. Now we can ask, well, what difference does that make? Okay, so it feels wrong, but it isn't wrong. So why does that make a difference? And the answer to that, Rav Dessler says, is because the values that we act on are things that we emotionally connect with. We could know values, and we can realize that intellectually speaking, they're true. If we don't take them to heart, they don't sit with us well. Even though we recognize it intellectually, it doesn't sit with us, and as such, we're not going to act on it. So if we have values that we do recognize, and we recognize the validity of them, then we're going to act on them. And if Moshe were to go and strike the Nile, then what happens is, even though intellectually speaking he knows it's not an attitude of gratitude, by hitting it, he'll be dulling his own sensitivities. Because if you have a value and you act against it, every time you do that, you've lessened its power and the truth it speaks within you. And then eventually, what will happen is, after all these experiences of dulling that sensitivity, Moshe might come up, or someone might come up in a situation like that, where Hakarat Tov is, intellectually speaking, required. He should show gratitude, but at that point it's too late. Because at that point, he'll have dulled his sensitivity so much that even if intellectually speaking he realizes that he should show Hakarat Tov, it's just not going to vibe with him emotionally. And that's what Moshe is protecting. And what's amazing about this is Rav Dessler also points out that these different types of truth work on different clocks. That is to say, intellectual truth recognizes both past, present, and future. They're all the same. It sweeps everything in terms of time. Emotional truth is not like that. Emotional truth lives only in the present. That is to say, if you have a friend who's feeling truly miserable, he's really just down on his luck, he doesn't feel good, he's just feeling terrible, trying to explain to him, no, things will get better, right? Remember back in the day when things were wonderful? He doesn't see that like that. Now things are horrible, so in the future they're going to be horrible. In the past they're horrible. Everything is going wrong. And the fact that you're on the outside, right? You're not within his emotional ambit. You're not feeling the emotions he's experiencing. You can't come to him with intellectual truth. He isn't seeing that right now because he's too possessed by his emotions. And just like if you were to see kids playing, right? If a kid fights with his friend, right, then in that case, they'll never be friends again. They don't want to talk. That's it. The friendship is over. 3 minutes later, you'll see them playing again. Now they're friends forever. Their friendship will never end. Because kids live within an emotional truth. They're not as intellectually aware as they will be when they're adults, hopefully, right? But children are completely possessed by their emotions, and therefore we see that actualized in the way they relate to their friends. And this explains why we can't challenge Moshe and say, well, look, strike the river, and once you strike the river, again, the Nile will become an object of Kiddush Hashem, and that's a good thing, and you could show that you're expressing your Hakarat Tov then. Because as we said, emotional truth lives in the present. At the moment that Moshe strikes the river, at that moment, that's where the sensitivity becomes dulled. Because saying, look, strike the river, and then afterwards, right, in the future, the river will become a Kiddush Hashem, and that's a good act. At that moment of striking the river, that's where Moshe has that gut feeling, that feeling that this is wrong. Even if it's intellectually not wrong, intellectually it's correct. Even so, now emotionally within the present, it is wrong. And that is something that Moshe wants to protect. And we could actually see that this is a beautiful way of recognizing the importance of Hakarat Tov. That's the ending point that Rav Bernstein ends on. We don't protect other values in the same way we protect Hakarat Tov. Because if someone can't recognize the good that's around them, that's the ultimate weakness, and that's something we learn from these subtle comments of Rashi. Shabbat Shalom.